At the NATO summit in Madrid this week, among the outcomes was an agreement about a new NATO strategic concept. What is it, and what might it mean for the war in Ukraine? The NATO Strategic Concept is designed to describe how NATO and its constituent nations will respond to the challenges, opportunities and threats to their security and defense. The development of the new version was an outcome of the 2021 NATO summit. This is the first update of the NATO Strategic Concept since 2010. The NATO website has a pretty cool summary of all previous strategic concepts, and the rationales for the development of each, at its website. This new version is a recognition of the fundamental changes in the global security environment in the past decade. It is also a reinvigoration of the alliance, giving it renewed purpose for the 21st century. Let's briefly review the content of the 2022 Strategic Concept. The new Strategic Concept has three key elements. 1. NATO values and purpose. 2. The strategic environment. And 3. NATO's response to the environment, described as its core tasks. Part 1. Purpose and values. Ensure collective defense, against all threats, from all directions. A defensive alliance. Common values, individual liberty, human rights, democracy and the rule of law. Commitment to Charter of the US and North Atlantic Treaty. Part 2. Strategic environment. Euro-Atlantic area not at peace. Authoritarian actors challenge interests, values and democracy. Russia the most significant and direct threat to security. Part 2. Strategic environment. 2. NATO does not seek confrontation and poses no threat to the Russia will continue to respond to Russian threats and hostile actions in a united way. Part 2. Strategic environment. 3. China's stated ambitions and coercive policies challenge our interests, security and values. China strives to subvert the rules-based international order. Partnership between China and Russia runs counter to our values and interests. Part 2. Strategic environment. 4. Terrorism the most direct asymmetric threat to the security of citizens and international peace and prosperity. Cyberspace contested at all times. Climate change the defining challenge of our time. So, that is a summary of the strategic environment as viewed from a NATO perspective. What is the response? There are three elements. 1. Deterrence and defense. 2. Crisis prevention and management. 3. Cooperative security. Deterrence and defense. This is a range of military responses including deterring and defending forward, collective readiness, interoperability and deployability, expedited digital transformation, secure use of space cyber, NBC defense, and nuclear forces supreme guarantee, crisis prevention and management. This is a much smaller section than the one on deterrence and defense, and while not an afterthought, clearly NATO sees this as an important but probably a secondary mission moving forward. Cooperative security. This examines NATO membership and the partnerships that NATO has with non-NATO parties that share its values. It also reaffirms previous decisions about Ukraine from the 2008 Bucharest summit. What does this mean for Ukraine? In the short term, it provides a strategic narrative that underpins Ukraine's support to Ukraine, as well as for new members joining NATO's alliance. The summit declaration also reaffirms NATO's open door policy. The reinvigoration of NATO at the summit is also good for Ukraine in the medium to long term. It should hopefully mean a resurgence of European defense capacity, which will underpin Ukraine's transition from a Soviet-equipped and supported military to a NATO standard. But reality is that a substantive reinvigoration of NATO and ongoing support to Ukraine is predicated on more investment in defense by NATO countries. The majority of members are not yet at the 2% of GDP defense spending benchmark. If countries such as Germany, Canada, Spain and Italy remain laggards in this regard, NATO will not be able to implement its expanded view of deterrence in defense. Deterrence is underpinned by a transparent commitment to increased defense spending, not business as usual. Many NATO nations that have given arms and munitions to Ukraine don't have large war stocks. At some point these must be replenished. Greater investment in defense industry will be required for both NATO and long-term support to provide arms and ammunition to Ukraine. Words and relationships in alliances matter, so the 2022 NATO Strategic Concept is an important statement of strategic intent and a recognition of the need to adapt to a changing strategic environment, and it provides the rationale for ongoing support to Ukraine. But increased defense industrial capacity is critical. War is again being fought at a scale that requires expanded industrial capability. If the NATO Strategic Concept drives this, it will assist Ukraine's transition to NATO munitions, and its capacity to fight on. End.